So we're here to talk about the driver team. And Uber, two of the major divisions of Uber are rider and driver. So drivers, the team is really focused on what do drivers care about? How can we make the experience great for drivers? And we are part of that here in Seattle with vehicle solutions and how we get drivers behind the wheel, as well as compliance and background checks. And so we'll have speakers from each of those teams come and talk about their areas, and that'll be part of what we're doing today. I'm thrilled to be able to have with us today Akash, who is the Director of Engineering for Driver, and he'll open us up with some remarks talking about what we're doing in Driver. I'm Ross, and I'll be talking about Seattle Driver in general, some of the things that we're doing right here. And we'll then hear from the two major teams, as I mentioned, compliance and background checks. We'll hear from each of the two different teams, and then vehicle solutions. My team will be talking about fleets, rentals, and the VS platform. At the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. We'll get all the speakers up here, as well as some of the leadership. And then we'll have some time for more cupcakes and mingling, and you can ask questions of anyone. If you'll notice, the drivers all have little dots, and they're color-coded, and we'll show you what those mean later. But as you go through and see a team that you'd like to learn more about, just think about that team. At the end, you'll see a coding of who to talk to. So do watch for that. Thank you very much. That's much better. No more feedback. So with that, let me welcome up Akash to talk about Driver and Seattle.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out on Thursday evening. I know everyone here is very busy, has a lot of things, commitments. So I appreciate everyone taking their time out of their day to come here to spend the day with us here at Uber. So some of you may notice the shirt I'm wearing says I drive in English and other languages. So one of the big things we're doing at Uber right now over the last, I would say, 6 to 8 months is every employee at Uber is really encouraged to go drive, right? To understand what it feels like to actually drive the car and do this on, a very regular cadence. So when you do drive with Uber as an employee, you get one of these cool T-shirts. So, I've been driving for a while now for Uber as an employee and getting that firsthand experience. And so, as Ross mentioned, we're really excited to be here today to tell you a little bit more about the driver team, what our mission is, the customers of the drivers themselves and what their needs are. And to kind of give you some insight, Uber is a very unique company where, most of you in this room have used the rider application. All of us are probably using it many times a week or a month, but very few of us probably have a good sense of what's happening on the driver's side, right? And so part of the goals today are to really give you some insights into that. So I wanted to start out just, our drivers, like who are they? What do they want? What do they need? What are their goals? What I've put up here on the slide is just, a few what we call the driver personas. We've done hundreds of hours of research and interviews and field research to understand like who are the drivers and their motivations and their goals. And everything we do on this team starts with them first. What do they need? What are their goals? What are their dreams? What are their ambitions, right? So if we meet those, we'll be successful, right? So we have big posters all around the office with these folks. We look at and study these things very carefully. So we always ground everything we do with how is it helping these people every single day. So today, Uber has over 1.5 million drivers on the platform. So 1.5 million people are earning money every month on the platform. So this is a really, really big deal. So when we do our work, we're thinking about those 1.5 million people, 600,000 of which are in the US. So that's a big number, in terms of just number of folks who are earning money on a platform. Beyond that, hundreds of thousands of drivers every month are signing up for the first time to drive for Uber. So these are people who learn about Uber through a friend or through advertising and find this as a way to either earn their primary income or supplement their income to earn a goal or to achieve a life's mission. So it's I get very passionate because when I talk to drivers or when I see what this is doing for their lives, it's really, really heartwarming, right? You see people now being able to spend more time with their kids or their families or have a dream of going on a vacation that they never could do before. So these things are really, they're very human and they're very real. So I'm really happy with Seattle and what we're doing here with the driver teams, because the teams that you're going to hear about from today are folks who are trying to make it really, really easy for people who want to earn money to sign up, get through that process really simply and quickly. Also, for folks who don't have a car, for many of us in this room, sure, owning a car is not a big deal. You have one, your parents have had one, but many people who want to drive for Uber don't have a car or don't have a car who qualify for Uber. So there's a huge effort here right in Seattle that's all about helping those folks who don't have cars get on the road and earn money. So, with that, I will sort of hand it back to Ross to talk a little bit about vehicle solutions. But I just want to thank everyone for coming here. I'll be around after the talk to mingle, chat. I have these multicolored stars on my badge, so and the shirt, so you should be able to find me. But anyways, again, appreciate you guys coming here tonight, and I'll hand it off to Ross.
Thanks, Akash. I will give you a warning. This is an engineering-driven talk. These were slides created by engineers, which means they look like engineer slides and not really cool marketing slides. So I'll give that caveat up front. Okay, they're better than that. I want to talk about the Seattle office and especially what we're doing here in Driver. So this office here was opened in 2015 and started small, has continued to grow. We currently are on 2 floors of this building with about 180 people, but it started just 2 years ago. A year after it started, Driver arrived and started focusing on compliance. And you'll hear more about what each of these teams that I discuss is talking about. But it was one team. It was a start to try and take advantage of a lot of the talent that we have in Seattle. What you'll find here are a bunch of really incredible engineers. Many of them come from other companies, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Google, with a lot of experience. And Uber really believes that this is a great market to find those people and have them join Uber, and which is why we continue to grow the team. And which is why 6 months later, we also added more teams, and Fleets and Rentals, part of the Vehicle Solutions team. And right now, 2 months ago, we've added more teams, background checks and vehicle solutions platform. So the point being, we continue to grow the number of teams here as well as the size of those teams to impact Uber's business more and more. And we will continue to do that going forward. As we look at headcount and Uber growth, a lot of it is happening here because we see the potential to hire great people. Just to give you an idea size-wise, we went from a handful of people back in those early days. We just about tripled in size in that first year. And we're looking to almost triple in size again in the next year. So just to give you an idea of the additional headcount that we're bringing in to solve some of these problems that we're working on in Seattle. So we're going to kick off with the compliance and background check team. And Siva, the other engineering manager in Seattle, is going to talk to that. And then after that, we'll get to vehicle solutions. So thank you very much, Siva.
Hi there. Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Siva. So I've been with Uber for close to 2 years now. So I manage the background checks and compliance teams to get you to understand what it means. So these are part of driver onboarding. So driver onboarding has about 5-6 teams in San Francisco, as well as the 2 teams I have here. To understand what the impact that we are making. So back in 2014, every Uber driver has to go to an ops office in person to hand over their documents and get signed up to be able to drive for Uber. And UberX was brand new. So UberX is the product which is where, like the car you and I drive would be able to drive for Uber. Before that, there was like Black Car, which is like a limousine special cars. And there were very few regulations because Uber was new, this ride-sharing industry was new. So that's how it was in 2014. So since then, a lot of things changed. So we built, like the markets changed, products changed, and I'll talk about it. But also at Uber, we built platforms and tools to support as part of the driver organization. So drivers are able to sign up on board without having to go to the ops office in many markets. That's all happens from the work from the onboarding team. But things also got complicated with Uber's growth in various markets, various products. So when you think about driver sign up, this is the common case, okay? So this is in US, for example, a new driver would download their app into their smartphone. Then they will enter their social security number. So a background check is going to be kicked off. And we'll talk about that later on what it means, but then they also consent to background check to say that Uber can do a background check for them. Then they upload a driver's license, they upload a vehicle insurance, they upload a vehicle registration, and then they are able to, a few days later, they get a mail, SMS message that they are now ready to drive for Uber. And then post sign up, they have to, upload the tax information, terms and conditions that they agree to be able to drive for Uber. They need to take a photo, and then while going online time, they get messages. So you might say like, hey, this is not that hard. What's so complex about it? Because now if you think about Uber, so we have multiple businesses and products, right? We talked about UberX, but there's also like Uber Eats, which is the restaurant delivery. You can get your food ordered and it'll be delivered by a Uber vehicle. We have Uber Rush, which is a parcel delivery. And then in different within P2P or the rides, you can actually, there are different products you can select. You can select UberX, you can select SUV, which is a bigger vehicle. So there are many products within that as well. Vehicle ownership. So most drivers in US have their own personal car and then they drive for Uber. But that's not the only one. There are, like Akash talked about it, where people who don't have a vehicle want to drive for Uber. So there are many different ways vehicles can be owned, and I think that vehicle solutions team will talk more about that later. And there are multiple experiences on signing up. You can sign up from your app, or you can sign up from a web page, go to Uber site, sign up. Or there are cases where we humans help the driver because the drivers need help. We have, and so there are those experiences as well. So, and then we have Uber is in more than 70 countries and 500 plus cities. Each one has a different requirement, different regulation. So when you add all of this together, there are like thousands of ways drivers can sign up. And there's also multiple communication methods like email, communication back to the driver, or SMS, in-app experience. There are various ways to communicate as well. So you can see onboarding became much harder because our platforms, the tools, services, everything we build needs to support all of this. And then also drivers make contact with support when something doesn't work. When they upload a document, there is someone who verifies they uploaded the right document. So all of these are complexities and things that onboarding team has built. So talking about Seattle, what's in Seattle? So I talked about onboarding, which is the teams in San Francisco as well. We have two teams as part of onboarding in Seattle. The red one is the compliance team and the blue one is background check team. So you can understand what we are building here. So driver sign up starts and where driver provides email, phone number, things like that. That's not one of the teams we have here. But consenting to background check, that's like some work we own. Document upload, documents that they upload. That's a team that compliance team works very closely with, but that team is in San Francisco as well. Background check team, where the background check happens, we use a third-party provider to do that, and we'll get into that details more. That is a team here in Seattle. Finally, when all the requirements have been met, the driver gets activated. That is that part of the technology is owned by a team in Seattle. And this is so now in majority of the markets, an Uber driver can sign up and be able to take trips without ever having to go to an office in person. And then sometime later, a year later, their documents expire or their background check expires. So they need to upload a new one. In that time, if they don't do that, drivers get deactivated. So they need to be compliant to come back and take trips. That is also handled by the compliance team here. Now, so once the drivers are onboarded, they start taking trips. That's go online is when they are going online. So they are saying that they are ready to take trips. So That's a pretty complex problem because you need to evaluate the driver and the vehicle and make sure they are, they are eligible to take the trips. That check is, owned by a service that gets handled by a service owned by the compliance team here. So what are the challenges? So the challenges are really multidimensional. You have to keep the user experience simple. You don't want the driver to know about all of this. The driver wants a very simple experience, start the app, go online or sign up easily and start taking trips. On the other side, we want to make everything 100% accurate and provide a safe experience for the riders. So we have to be 100% correct. And then we have to be cost effective because like if background checks, we use a third party and we pay them to do that check for us. So that has to be cost effective. So we have to think about all of this. And then the scale. So Uber has hundreds of thousands of drivers signing up every month, millions of drivers going online a day. And all of this is handled by the systems that we built. So that's what the team is working on. That's what the opportunities that we are excited to work on here. So with that, I'm actually going to have DW, who's one of the first engineers in Seattle, to come and talk about compliance.
Awesome. Thanks, Siva. It was a really awesome intro about how the driver world works. Hey, so I'm DW. As Siva mentioned, I've been here for 2 years. I've gotten a chance to work on a number of teams in the Seattle office, so various parts of Uber. And most recently, the driver team, which is really kind of like a great home for me. It's a really good fit. It was like about a year ago, I was heading to a concert with a bunch of friends. And as they paddled out of the car and left the car, I took off to go park before I was gonna head back to the concert. And it turned out that even though I had thought they were all out of the car, like one of them wasn't quite out of the car yet. Like one back left door, they chose 2 doors, that thing. And luckily I noticed, I slammed the brakes, like Demetrius was okay. But I had this thought. This thought was like, like, what are the odds of that happening? Like, is that 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000? I don't know, 1 in 100,000. Like, how often do you like start to drive away and somebody's still halfway out of your car? Well, I can't tell you like the active numbers, but I went to Uber the next day and I like logged in and I was like, how many trips does Uber do, right? And like the last numbers that we publicly announced put us at about 2 billion trips a year. So for us, if you think that's 1 in 100,000 odds, that's like 54 times in a day. Like if you think something has a 1 in a million odds of happening, that happens 5 times a day for us. And so all of a sudden compliance and making sure that nothing ever really happened such that like Uber would be really harmed substantially, like an article that says, hey, there's a driver, this horrible thing happened and they never even had a driver's license. Like how did they get on the platform, right? And so I headed to driver compliance and as Siva sort of mentioned, like it became really obvious, like the way we have to treat driver compliance is 100% compliant 100% of the time. This isn't like a 4 nines kind of thing or a 5 nines kind of thing. Like it really just takes one mistake before Uber's really in trouble. The compliance team is kind of interesting as well, though, because like, yes, it has this public perception customer, right? But there's also the driver as a customer. So imagine this, insurance documents, when do they expire? End of the month, maybe December 31st, you're a driver. It's New Year's, you can make a lot of money tonight. Except right at midnight, right at the cusp of midnight, you're about to cash in, you're kicked offline, right? Like absolutely unacceptable. So not only do we have to be compliant 100% of the time, but we have to help the drivers understand like how are we being compliant? What is about to impact them and what can they do to get out of that? And then the third customer is sort of like our city teams themselves. Like people configure these tools. People have to understand what it is that they're setting and how they are or are not compliant. But of course, this is an engineering talk, right? And so what I wanted to do was tell the story of 3 services that the compliance team wrote recently and how those fit into 3 things that I think are really important about working on compliance at Uber. And that is 1, we have like some really great, strong technical challenges. 2, there's some serious opportunity here for like going and cutting some fresh ground and really doing some of that resume building kind of work. And 3 is like, man, like I really feel like I have an impact, a frontline impact. I can see the code I wrote, you know, unlike when I have to explain to my parents, like, oh, well, it's in some deep subsystem you don't understand. The first one I wanted to throw down was the strong technical challenges. So Siva started to mention this. Clearly, we can imagine we're building a system. It decides if a driver is compliant or not. Probably background check, probably driver's license, probably vehicle insurance. Before long, you probably have some rules engine like, oh, vehicle registration. Is it a commercial vehicle? Okay, then maybe we need some commercial vehicle insurance as well. Maybe we need a for hire vehicle license if you have for hire vehicle plates. Maybe there's some city one-offs. Like maybe there's a particular city knowledge test, or maybe the state you're in requires that we register to find out instantly about motor vehicle record updates. And then there are like little fiefdoms, right? Like maybe the airport requires you have some special sticker that allows you to pick up a ride at the airport, or maybe like the downtown city limits has some special sticker or permit or test that you have to take, right? So we can imagine we start building these pieces, and before long, we throw it into a service. So let's think about the service flow, right? The service flow roughly makes sense. Driver wants to go online, call some kind of real-time service. That real-time service calls into us. And now we want to act real fast. So we cache everything we can. Is the driver valid? Is the driver invalid? What are the problems with this driver? What do they need to do to correct it? In order to do that, we have to care about all those things. So there's a document service out there, a background check service, a driver service, everything you can imagine. And so we're listening for changes from those services. And the minute we hear something's changed, we have to call up into onboarding and say, hey, process this really complex state machine that we're starting to build out and tell us, like, are we still good? Are we still valid? And we need to cache that so that we can, once again, continuously respond at a really quick pace. Now, this is sort of like halfway to where we're heading. Like, we've started to build this part out, but we have yet to do the true like online compliance, right? And so what we're starting to play with now is like, great, this is for going online. What about when the trip's actually happening? What about the actual trip request, the trip dispatch? Like, how will that work? And so the way that most of Uber works around this side is every 4-ish seconds, the driver's app pings in and lets us know where they are. So they ping a service, a real-time service, and it throws that information into a database. And so we have this database, and it's sort of like, oh, here's where, you know, all the drivers are. And then meanwhile, the rider opens up their app and they're, oh, I really like a ride, right? So they request the ride, pings into another real-time service, which goes and queries our database. And now we do a dance. We actually have a service called Disco, because it's a bit of a dance, right? We have to find out like who's gonna be the pairing. Great, makes the match, the ride happens. But we've missed the whole compliance thing, right? What about the case where the driver is not at the airport, they're at a parking lot outside the airport. So, you know, they can drive here, but the rider is actually at the airport and they're not allowed to pick up at the airport. Or the vice versa case, right? Like, what if the driver's at the airport? They're not allowed to do trips to the airport. But if they just drove a minute away where there's a rider in a parking lot requesting a ride, they'd be good. So we need to start tagging this information as to what the different profiles, what the different views of compliance are. And so this is where we're starting to build out today. And a system in which the real time can actually call into us and say like, hey, tell me about the profiles. Like, in what ways is this driver compliant? That's great that they have their license and their registration and their insurance. What are all the other little caveats? And so this is the kind of area that we're starting to build out today. And it's a fundamental shift in the way that Uber works. And I can tell you that there have been many really brilliant minds sitting around long meetings just discussing and hashing out all of these little edge cases. And so for me, like, this actually is one of the stronger technical challenges that our team's facing in the next upcoming year. Ripe with opportunity. Like, how about a story about some crazy opportunity to just go and build something absolutely amazing? Legal documents, my favorite thing, right? Isn't everyone excited? We're gonna talk about legal documents? No one? Yeah. Okay, legal documents. So as you can imagine, when a driver signs up, at some point we have terms and conditions, we have background check, consents that they have to do, and we have some city addendums, right? When Uber first started, it was really simple. Like, we launched in San Francisco, okay, we add New York, Seattle, actually the third city for Uber to ever exist in. And we kind of used this global template, right? It just worked for everything. Until, of course, you know which state had to like make a difference, right? It has to be California. So California, they need a slightly different terms of service, but that's not a problem because, you know, it's late at night. We'll just say like, if state equals California, then, right? Like that's what we would all do, right? You know, it works. And then it happens again for another state and another. And before long, you realize like, wow, we've got a lot of if else's all over our code base. It's cool. We've got lots of good engineers. Why don't we just do this directory structure idea? That way we don't even have to deal with this terms of service stuff anymore. Version 2, we'll use S3 or some other, you know, directory structure based blob store. We'll have a global template and we'll do some kind of bucket stuff, right? Like if you have a folder named USA, or if you have a folder named Germany, oh, under USA, you could have a folder named California or New York. Under California, you could have a folder named San Francisco, but like, you better get that spelling right. You better not drop a file in the wrong folder. Oh, and if Hawaii needs to go live at midnight, you're waking up at 5 a.m. because you got to drop that file exactly at midnight their time, right? This quickly led to like an ability to really move fast in terms of like terms of service and handling all these edge cases. But we had this horrible problem, which was like there was one guy who was the only guy that anyone trusted because he was the only guy that seemed to like put folders in the right bucket. He had to always get up at 5 in the morning. And like we joke to this day, like we almost joke that the name of the service that replaced this is like the Michael Coleman service, because this is the name of the man who used to do all of this work. So this is the kind of example, like we joined the team and this is how it looked. And like very quickly you start to realize like, oh, like maybe there should be a web UI for this with drop downs. Maybe there's an approval process. Like maybe there's a start date time, right? And like it didn't take very long to realize that like, yeah, the driver app says like, hey, I want to go online, and real time says like, hey, have all the documents been signed? And the legal documents should maybe contact a database instead of an if else statement, right? And maybe we should like build some nice web UI so that someone in legal can say like, hey, I want to make a change. And like someone else can say like, hey, are there any changes waiting to be approved? And like, oh yeah, I'd like to approve that kind of change. This service that I describe here, version 3 of our regulatory documents, was written in the last 6 months. So what is the purpose of this story? The purpose of this story is, wow, like 6 months ago, we still operated with S3 buckets and people dropping files. Like we have moved so fast and we have grown so fast, and you know, we've built solutions that are good enough, you know, for the time when we're there, but they're not good enough for where we are today. And that means this is an engineering environment in which you can come in 6 months ago and you can build this system. You know, you can be that hero. Third story, frontline defense, feeling it on the ground. So we don't know what the heck a Waybill is. We're in America. But it turns out that it's pretty common in other countries to have something called a Waybill. This is the driver app. There's a button on there that says Waybill. And if they tapped it, they would get a not heavily redacted Waybill. A Waybill is basically like a legal document. It says who you're driving, where you're going, what are the terms, what is the fare. And the requirements differ from state to state or from country to country. It's sort of a similar thing. Like we had a bunch of PDF files. People were just editing them by hand. Like this doesn't really scale, right? So, oh God, this is a great slide. So let's talk about where we came from. We had really old code. I love this house. This is why it's a great slide. This is like literally how old our code was. So the original code when we joined the teams a year ago was actually from the beginning of Uber. Like that's how old the code was. It was a whole bunch of text files in a directory. There was a whole bunch of like linking. That didn't work well. So then there's a whole bunch of if-else statements. So you do the if-else statements and then you do the linking numbers and then you look at the files. No one could really make sense of what was going on. Oh, and also like you would get fabs or bugs assigned to you that would be like, hey, can you replace this word with this word? And it would be in another language and you have no idea what's going on. So it didn't really take very long to realize that what should really happen is when the driver app wants to fetch a Waybill, and then the Waybill grabs one of these files off of disk and then starts calling trips and drivers and riders to fill out the template. What should really be happening is it should call a database that has these templates. And there should probably be a way for like a city team to connect in and edit those templates. And so once again, this is something that we were able to roll out pretty quickly. So here's an example of a template. I put in like trip UID, fare, and stuff like that. And all of my information kind of popped up on the other side. What really happens in real life is someone from ops goes and they take a quick lesson on HTML, or they copy paste, and they build out what ends up being the legally required Waybill in their particular city. And what's nice about this is like, yeah, we could do translation. You'd think that would be a nice thing to do, but like, no, we absolutely don't do translation. It turns out like in Greece, it doesn't matter what the driver speaks, the Waybill has to be in Greek. And yeah, like we could have our translators translate it, but these are legal words. Like they have to be precise. And so actually this tool has really had a big impact, and more so because we will often see stuff where like all of a sudden drivers start getting 4,000 euro fines because some wording is wrong. And now the city team can actually go in and edit and fix it like within a moment's notice. So that's kind of the story of driver compliance. I think we have like a lot of technical challenges. I think we have a lot of like resume building opportunities. And then I think like there's really a lot of real world impact that you get to see on a daily basis. And so without further ado, I'd like to bring up my buddy Heath to talk about the other side of our world, which is background checks. Cool.
Thanks, DW. Always a excellent intro, hard to match. My name's Heath Honeycutt. I'm a senior engineer on the background check team, which I think you heard recently has moved to Seattle as of March. Previously, it was engineering was in San Francisco for this service. Background checks, I think, are really fundamentally important to the Uber business. By way of a story, I was out with some friends and acquaintances just a few weeks after moving to the background check team, and nobody knew that I work on background checks. I generally don't tell people, just don't want to have that conversation about various things. So it came out, somebody said, hey, you know, I don't want to take Uber, I'd rather support the taxi drivers. And you know, I'm not going to say much, I'm just going to sit there. This woman who was in the group said, hey, you're living dangerously, man. You know, Uber background checks its drivers. Taxi companies don't. And I was just sitting there thinking like, well, this is important to her. This is why she prefers Uber. She feels safer. And this is a way that our riders trust us. And so it's made me think, hey, I better do a good job with these background checks. But definitely happy to hear that it makes a difference to our riders. The background check team, we have a lot of interesting engineering challenges and objectives. It's really a team, I think, where the opportunity for personal growth is there and for recognition within the company. Some of the objectives that we are looking at, of course, accuracy. I think DW made an excellent point, to be 100% accurate 100% of the time. We want our background checks to be valid, and in particular, we don't want to mistakenly run them for the wrong person or fail to run them entirely. Certain things that a bug might introduce that we have to absolutely avoid. Efficiency is an important point. Bringing drivers onto the system helps us increase our supply, helps us grow our business, but background checks take some time. It actually depends on the market. It's interesting, in Saudi Arabia, a background check might take 1 hour. It's done through the government, and they seem to have a pretty tight ship. Through the third-party provider that we use in the United States, it could take much longer, might average about 8 days. So we need to do what we can to make it as speedy as possible. But we also don't want to embark on a background check for somebody who's not actually going to drive for us, because the background checks cost a certain amount of money, and we would like to have some indication that this person who's signing up really intends to drive. So we usually wait until they've at least uploaded some document before we start. And then also, we don't want to be a burden on the driver. We want to have a simple consent process and clear communications so that, did you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry, I thought I saw your hand. Those are our objectives. So the present background check system consists of 2 services that are written in Python. We have the business logic service, which essentially calculates when is the driver in need of a background check. Maybe it's been 1 year since the last time and the background check has expired. But for drivers that are coming on the system, we usually look at have they uploaded documents, and obviously have they consented to a background check. Then the third parties we deal with vary by country. We have a number of third-party corporations that we get our background checks through in the United States. As I mentioned, we have a specific government provider for Saudi Arabia. We have a commercial provider for Brazil. So those are just a few examples that we talk to a lot of different third-party APIs. Some of them we talk to over HTTP SSL. Some of them we upload files via SFTP and then download response files. So a variety of different ways we communicate. Today we have a communication service that orchestrates all of that, and we'll talk a little bit about where we're going with that. So the challenges the team faces. We have complex requirements for different jurisdictions. There are some jurisdictions where we do multiple background checks, and then this brings us into the territory of what order do we do these background checks? We want it to be fast, but we also want to save money where possible. So there are some trade-offs there. Also, some of the background checks are maybe a little bit more serious than others. We might want to save them for the end. Some of the jurisdictions require or offer a subscription service, which is a situation where we register the driver with that service. And then if they get into an accident or if they are arrested or anything like that, we're notified as soon as possible by that organization. So they may call us back with new information 6 months after we've registered the driver, or a year. So sometimes communicating with the third-party services can be unreliable. It might not even be their fault. Sometimes communicating with Brazil over the internet 24/7 isn't in the cards. The internet may go down between here and Brazil from time to time. So obviously we have retry logic and all the kind of things that you would expect to handle that. And our biggest upcoming challenge is how do we grow this platform to global coverage? How do we make sure that we have the ability to do background checks in every market where it makes sense for the business? And that is really coming down to factoring our service code so we compartmentalize our regional solutions. This is kind of what we're thinking about, taking away the central communication service in which every third-party provider is incorporated, compartmentalizing the providers via a framework so that our business logic service will continue to talk to the provider interfaces, but they'll be compartmentalized from each other. This will allow our engineering teams to really work in parallel and scale better, not all contributing to the same code base that tries to handle communications for all the different solutions. Cool. And so that is the summary of the background check system, which is here in Seattle, and appreciate your time. Up next is Zong from Vehicle Solutions.
All right. So my name is Zong. I'm working in the Vehicle Solution organization of the driver org. So what is Vehicle Solution? So apparently this is more or less a problem in the United States because in the United States, people have higher income and cars are relatively cheaper. So a lot of people have easy access to cars, but that's not really the case in many parts of the world where a lot of people, they want to drive for Uber, however, they don't have a lot of cars. So Vehicle Solution actually is the solution to bring cars to drivers who wants to drive for Uber, and so that they can make a living. And also, we also support those people who have cars. We are able to link drivers to those car owners so that they can lend their car to drivers to drive. And that's just one model. And what we call fleets. And other part of Vehicle Solution under the platform is rentals. So we partner up with a lot of rental companies in the United States and many other countries. So for example, the Enterprise and Hertz. So nowadays you can just go to one of the rental agencies in downtown Seattle. No, actually, we're coming to Seattle, not in Seattle yet. It's in San Francisco. So you can go to one of the rental car location in Hertz and just rent this car for a day or even for a week. Then you can drive for Uber. Another model we have is, which is coming along, is called the hourly rental. And our rental, that team, the engineering team is in San Francisco. But as you can imagine from the name, is people can rent a car and just for an hour or two. It's kind of like Zipcar model, but they can just rent the car and then drive for Uber. So all in all, what Vehicle Solution does is just to bring the car to people who wants to drive for Uber. So how do we do that? Oh, sorry. Okay, so what I have just described is about the organizations and how do we do that? Okay, the first one is the fleets. So as I just mentioned, fleets is a model where you can, as an individual car owner, you can give the car to some of the driver and the driver drive for you. And this is what we call the fleets model. The funny joke is whenever I describe this model to, when I say I work for fleets in Uber to friends, they always think I'm working in this data center fleets infrastructure. So I want to lay it out first. So basically, it just partner with one driver under them. And there's a variety of reasons where the fleets model come into existence. So as mentioned, so car ownership is not really a thing in many parts of the country. And also there's many other important reasons as well. Just imagine in all of the developing world, all the car drivers, they don't even have bank account. So the driver, they don't even have bank account, and they want to drive for Uber. And in this case, how does Uber even pay them? So that's a valid question. So that's when the fleets as an organization come into play. So the fleets, it can be an individual, can be a company, or can be even very large enterprise. It varies from size to sizes, sometimes from, in most common cases in India and Mexico, it's 1 to 2 cars in a fleet. And in some countries like Russia and Egypt, it's going to be between 500 cars, a few thousand cars. So as you can imagine, the fleets model just is so vastly different in so many countries. And we support this business be able to scale, and we will be able to, grow the business. And another reason why fleets is vital in many of the countries is because of the regulation. So some countries, it says, okay, in order for you to drive for Uber, you cannot be an individual operator. You have to operate under the umbrella of an organization. So in order for Uber to 100% compliant to operate in this country, so fleet is a necessary model for us to continue over there. So there are basically a variety of reasons fleet's model is being supported at Uber. And however, so the model has been, the model has existed in Uber, I think, as long as Uber has come to existence. However, this team is brand new. This team has only been established since last August. And so before that, it's all organic growth. And without quoting any specific numbers, but outside of US, fleets is huge amount of supply hours. And even within the US, it's significant. And what is our vision? Our vision is be able to, on the partner side, basically the fleet owner side, we want to fulfill the entrepreneur aspirations. So we want to make them easy to make money. Basically, if you have a free car as an individual, you just happen to be parking at your garage, you can give it to someone to drive and to make money. And if you're an enterprise, if you're a company, you have a few thousand cars, you can easily on board with the fleet platform and give those cars to drivers and to make a profit. So what are the challenges and what are the products we have been built since this team has established things like less than a year ago? So we shipped 3 products. So the first product I'm going to show you right now is a fleet line map. So basically this is a live tracker where all the cars are. So car is an expensive asset to most people. So in this case, if I am a car owner and I give the car to someone to drive, I will be worried about where the car is car being fully utilized, is the driver takes good care of my car, and where they are. So this is to fulfill that purpose. So on this tool, this is a web UI tool built by React. So we show the live location of the cars to drivers, and we show what the trip been happening and how many of the the utilization model of this car and all the bells and whistles you can imagine with a business solution. And the challenges are, I think DW just mentioned, the car sends a ping every 4 seconds to our server. And just imagine how many fleets cars are in the world. It's in the magnitude of hundreds of thousands. and even more than that if at peak hours. So all these cars are sending all their pings to our backend system, and our backend system is robust enough to be able to handle all this traffic and diverge and also shard this traffic into different servers. And this tool is exposing to hundreds of thousands of fleet partners as well. They can log in at the same time and looking at the data and how do we deal with caching, how do we deal with the database and networking, all these things we need to take care of. So this is basically how do we show the real, how do we take care of that huge amount of traffic in the real time. And this is accurate as to a few seconds. Okay, this next product we have shipped in the half-year time is what we call the fleet dashboard. So this is an end-to-end business solution for the fleet owners. This is basically the one-place shop for them to be able to monitor and manage and also do all sorts of things that's related to the business. So I'm showing you the screen with the performance for that dashboard. So we're just showing the people who are operating under the fleet, how many trips they have been doing, and the utilization rate, and also their ratings. So this is pretty straightforward. But before this tool, what did they do before? So I have seen some fleet partner in Mexico City. So they basically write it down on a piece of paper and by calling this partner, hey, how many trips you do? And another complexity is coming with a collection of cash. Cash is not really that a saying in the United States too, but it's really a saying in many countries. And Uber accepts cash in many parts of the world. And one thing a lot of fleet partners they worry about is how do I make sure the Uber system is keep tracking of the money, the cash this driver has been collecting so that this driver doesn't shop me. And so it was a really messy process before, and this helps them to solve that huge problem. And also, how do I reward my best driver? How do I reward the best performer on the fleet? So it was not that straightforward with this tool. And one of the technical challenges with building this tool is, remember, the fleet comes in with a variety of sizes. In some countries, it's even in the magnitude of thousands, and this data has to stay fresh and accurate on very timely manner. So the engineering resources we spend to tune this process, and we spend on the inter-service communication, caching, and also how do we betterize the data pipeline is tremendous to be able to ship this end-to-end management too. And there's a lot of regulations coming into play. This tool also supports, for example, the management of the vehicle documents, is managed the payout, the payments calculation, and also all this compliance stuff. Basically, this is a one-stop shop built from the ground up. And since this team has been established like August last year, and we shipped, the first version of this website was shipped year-end last year. So that's the velocity of speed we are talking about here. So the third product we ship is, since this team has come to Seattle, is a Fleets app. So basically, why do we need an app since we already have this shiny website? So it turned out this, again, this is not a US problem, but in many countries, people are not accustomed to websites. They are more accustomed to be able to view everything on their phone. And so the first version of this is being, this app is built for the Indian market because people over there are more accustomed on checking on their phone. And another important reason, their fleet size is small. It's mostly between 1 to 5 cars. So in this case, it's much easier just to pull out the phone and just to check, hey, where my drivers are, how's the drivers been doing, and on the go instead of having someone to looking at the laptop all day. So this is basically slimmed down version of the website. So, but it has everything. So for example, it has a live map with all the drivers, and it has the earning data, and also they can basically have the kind of ranking system of the drivers, and they can also have even the very, for example, some of the performance data and also the earning data too. So that's all the product we ship. And let me talk about technology. So this is a very, very high level diagram of our architecture. This is more like from 30,000 fleets. And as you can see, the partners, the fleet owners, they have 3 product or tools. So they have the fleet management portal, which is hosting the management tool as well as the line map. They also have the fleet app, which is a native Android app. And by the way, the reason we are building Android only right now is this app, not iOS, is because we are building this for a lot of emerging market, which Android has a lot of much higher penetration rate. And all these products are talking to our uniform fleet backend services. So we have a few services, and some of them, the early ones, were written in Python, and all the newer ones are written in Go, as the company is moving towards Go. And we are aggregating a lot of business information from all the other internal Uber services. Basically, we take dependency on them, and we do all the data messaging, and we do the data pipelining, and also analytics, and we put them onto our database using Cassandra. And also, a lot of internal Uber system also take a dependency on us, and to be able to do a lot of business matrix thing. So this is a very, very high level technical architecture of our fleets program. Okay, so that is the end of my talk. And next up, we will have Ryan to talk about rentals within the Waybill solutions.
Good talk, man. All right. I'll stand here, just off the stage. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Wang. I'm a software engineer from Rentals team. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we are doing in engineering team for rentals. So one of the key values we believe in Uber is we are the owners, but not renters. But for our team, we are the owners of the renters. Thanks. And yeah, and so what problems are we solving? We are solving a lot of interesting and challenging problems every day. But fundamentally, what is the problem we're trying to solve? So as Zong mentioned, this is an idle vehicle sitting in the parking garage at Hertz or Enterprise or any rental companies. And we have a driver or potential driver who wants to drive for Uber, but he doesn't have a car, or his car is not available. Maybe it's in the maintenance. Maybe he just borrowed his car to his son. So we give this problem to Uber rentals platform. What we have as outcome is a rental vehicle which is fully activated on Uber that our driver can happily drive on the road. So we close the gap on the two ends. We help the potential driver to realize their ambitions to make earnings through Uber platform. And we also leverage the idle vehicles for those rental companies. So that's our mission. And like the impact. So the team was founded Q3 last year, and it's already been one of the fastest growth team in Uber. And we started based off in US, and we have expanded in more than 10 countries internationally in past 3 quarters. And we have a footstep in Brazil, which comes to 1/3 of the Uber trips are on the rental platforms. And Uber is only available through rental platforms in some marketplace like Taiwan, which is 100%. And we have interesting like business problem to solve like every day, because every country or every market you go into, you have to tailor your product a little bit to fit perfectly for the local needs. To give you one example, when we launched early this year in New York City, and we have to tailor their needs that a same vehicle can be rented out or leased out at the same time. So short term is rental, but long term is leasing. How can you adapt that change from your backend system? You need to know this vehicle is rented out or leased out for how long, to whom, and who is going to maintain it, like set of problems. So on the engineering side, to leverage our business requirement, we have a full stack of technologies. On the backend, we use Go, which supports concurrency in the best way. And Go language also compiles into the machine code and execute it directly, as opposed to Java, which is running on JVM. And on the front end, we have refactored our code recently to use React plus Redux. So for those of you who doesn't know what is Redux, so Redux is just universal data store, which attempts to make predictable mutations on your state variable. As a result, we minimize our service calls from the backend and also minimize the component re-rendering. As a result, users have astonishing and smooth experience on the front end. And due to the nature of our service, we need to make this service available and real time in multiple nations and in multiple regions. So we have a lot of challenging distributed application problems. And a little bit about our rental architect. So first, starting from the building blocks. And this is our building blocks. We need to make service calls to a lot of our core services or internal service, vehicle documents, user, and payments. And on top of that, we build our backend service in Go. This is a higher abstraction of all the service call we have. So our downstream systems don't need to make those service dependencies for every one of them. And on this abstraction, we provide the functionalities that's used by our users, like create vehicle, upload document, assign vehicle to driver, and which supports our rental front-end application, built in React and Redux. And this will be used by the rental companies. So the front-end service will be used by the rental admins. The rental admins is when you walk into Enterprise or Hertz, the person at the rep's desk. And he or she will be using this website to create a vehicle for you and upload document for you and assign the vehicle to you. And every single action here needs to be real time. Because if you're going to a rental dealership, you want to have a car. And once you have the car, you want to go into your Uber driver app and go online instantly because you are paying for this car starting from now on. So we really need to make this real time. And we also have the public REST APIs from our backend services, which can be used from the developers in those rental companies. For example, if you want to create one vehicle and upload document, you can use our web application. What if you have 3,000 vehicles from Enterprise? You need probably someone to write a script and loop through our vehicles, create a document, and make them ready in your inventory. So that's our window opened for those rental companies. And our service is also used by drivers onboarding, and the end user will be the driver partners. And also our rentals booking, which mentioned by Zhang. And we have a lot of challenges over here. One of the tricky problems is you are going to write the same functions which used by your internal service and external users. Internal, you are on Swift. External, you are on HTTP. How do you leverage this? And I will be answering that after the talk if you are interested and find me. To wrap up my talk, we are in a team growing really fast with a huge amount of international expansion, and we are staying close to our customer. And this photo is Zhang and Ryan Chesson visiting our enterprise location in San Francisco last year. Okay, so I'll introduce my colleague, so tech lead Muniru from the VS platform team. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ryan. I'll take help from the laptop, actually. So I'll stand rather here. And I'm an engineer at the Seattle Vehicle Solutions team, more specifically at Vehicle Solutions platform team. It's actually one of the newest team. It's only 2 months old. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's only 2 months old, and it's actually still being formed. But as the name suggests, platform is relatively lower in the stack in terms of where it sits in Vehicle Solutions. But before diving into what platform is, I want to give you a little more detail that almost everybody has touched, but I want to reiterate it, is that unlike United States, the other side of the planet where people who own the car are not likely to drive the car is because the car is too expensive. And if you have that much money to buy a car, you're not likely to take Uber job as a driver. So that's where one of the problem comes in. It means that we have lots of people who wants to drive for Uber, but they don't own a car. And from Uber's point of view, we want more people to drive Uber car because we have strong demand in terms of Uber rides. And that's where vehicle solutions is, that we provide people the vehicle so they can drive a car, and Uber's mission fulfills, like transportation is as easy or as available as running water, although not everywhere running water is that easy, but hopefully someday it'll be. So in terms of platform, so as we build things like rental and fleets and several other teams in San Francisco in terms of hourly rentals, providing leasing and others, we realize that this is one part of the business where it is growing very fast. Vehicle solutions is already a substantial part of Uber's business. So there is a need to consolidate all these activities. And Uber, unlike many other companies or large companies, Uber is actually fast growing. The business growth is so fast that you don't necessarily have the time to go for a huge architecture building before you go to your customer. So the vehicle platforms team is actually now trying to consolidate everything that we are building on top, things like fleets, rentals, leasing, and all other. And we have already identified a bunch of components that we believe that consolidating them would make the platform or the vehicle solutions to expand even faster to those markets that we are targeting. Things like having a configuration service, things like providing a unified UI, things like managing inventory for cars, making payments smooth. Earlier, we have been discussing that we want to onboard drivers fast, so to make the platform so smooth that people can get onto the platform fast, get their payment fast, all sorts of things. And also understand that if everything is consolidated, all of these things are generating a lot of data. And all this data is coming through the platform, which means that now we have a gold mine of data where we can go through and understand that where we can improve our efficiency, and not just efficiency, where the next business opportunities might lie in. And we can apply machine learning, data science, and all sorts of things. So that's where the more interesting and expansive part comes in. In terms of tech stack, it's pretty similar to what others have described. Our middle layer is Golang, and we do have a little bit of UI and other stuff with Node.js and React. We have UberFX and Glue. That's some of the things that we have open source from Uber recently. And storage layer is mostly Cassandra. And we also have our open sourced schemaless database for some of the legacy stuff. And our scale is actually at global level. We are everywhere where vehicle solutions are available. The platform code is running there, which means that anytime you write a little bit of code in platform, it's probably going to be used by millions of people in their daily life. So your code is going to be part of a lot of people's life. And we are also doing it, trying to do it to match Uber speed, to redesign components as fast as we can, and writing new services as fast as we can. And that's basically where you come in. Join the team and be part of the growth and make it ourselves successful in terms of providing contributing to Uber's success. I wanted to show this slide to you a little bit. I don't want to go into detail to show you that the number of moving parts for vehicle platform, there's quite a bit. Many of each of them are separate component or a service or a microservice. And the lowest layer is actually platform. And in fact, you can see that these dotted lines means they don't exist. So they need to exist. So these are basically the charter, which means that more than half of the stuff are not built, not yet. So as we hire more and more engineers, they will be contributing to it. With that, I want to hand it over to Dee. He'll go into the detail of how business part of the platform works with engineering.
Hi, I'm Dee. I'm with the platform team. So here, as of today, so we are the as Maru mentioned, we are the platform team that provide a solid foundation for various products that provided by vehicle solution team. For example, we have the Uber rental, we have the Uber exchange and leasing fleets, Uber maintenance service, and we also support the tools for the Uber operations and partners. So as of today, so the team are building two services. One is the ops portal and one is the business configuration service, which is the foundation for everything now. And in the near future, we are planning to build the business auditing service, payment service, last but not least, most exciting part, business intelligence service platform. So from the business perspective, we are the team that support more than 1 million of the drivers for the Uber who are using Uber to make their life easier every day. And we also need to move fast. We integrate all the internal services and all the open source libraries or all the cutting edge technology in order to move fast to support the hypergrowth of Uber globally from Europe to Asia to South America. So you can see 1 million, and we also support more than 500 cities globally. And from the technology perspective, we're using all kinds of cutting edge technologies like open source, Golang, Cassandra, ELK. So you have the freedom, you have enough freedom to use those technologies. So that's all for the platform team.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. All right. So I guess I'm doing this part, but I think the main reason why we actually had everyone here and what we wanted to talk about was why are we here, right? Why is driver important? If you think about Uber as a two-sided marketplace, there's rider and driver. But if you look at it from a competitive landscape, the driver is what our competitive advantage is. When you look at companies like Amazon, eBay, Groupon, which are all two-sided marketplaces, what you see is the way they solve it is they win the driver side or the supply side of the business, and then they subsidize demand. Our team, the driver org, is focusing on that. And by the way, it may seem like it's a massive, massive coalition. And all these projects, by the way, sounded like a lot of work. It's actually a really small team. And I hope that kind of came through that. The second part I wanted to convey was what our teams are doing, right? Oftentimes a common question comes about is, hey, Uber's already got everything figured out. Why do you need more engineers? Like, what is it there for me to do? What is it for me to build? What you saw was a bunch of engineers, not managers, talking about why the work they're doing is so important and why each one of them is like saying, hey, you should be a tech lead on one of our teams or come build these services. That is an amazing opportunity. A lot of this infrastructure, a lot of these projects that we talk about don't exist, but they are also some of the most complex parts of the systems, right? If you think about what it means when Siva talked about the compliance side, what it is you are enabling anybody to get a job, right? As you look at your first day at whatever company you work at, imagine your first day, right? You sat there, somebody from HR was there to answer any and all questions for you. They were telling you, oh, you have your background check passed. Did you have your W-2 figured out? Did you have your I-9? Do you have all the work authorizations? We want to do this globally, and we want to do this via mobile app so that any driver that you take a ride with, you feel safe that each of us can say, hey, yeah, take an Uber. That's a hard problem to solve. As DW mentioned, 1 in a million times, that happens 100 times. That is 100, right? Yeah, 1,000, sorry, 1,000. I can do math, I swear. There's a reason I'm not writing code. But that's crazy, right? And that is hard. Like from an engineering side, that's hard. But the other part is it has to support all of our trips, right? So the most recent number we said is we were doing 2 billion trips. By the way, that number is way outdated. Uber is on an exponential trajectory. The first 1 billion number we had announced was in December of 2015, I believe, or 2016? 2015, December 1 billion. In June of 2016 is when we announced we hit 2 billion. That means we had done 1 billion trips in 6 months. If you think about that, right? Like we've doubled as a business in 6 months, and that is hard problems to solve. Similarly on the vehicle solution side, right? Like we talked about all the global challenges we have. These are not easy problems. We have markets like Taiwan, which are completely rental specific, to markets like India, where your drivers are oftentimes illiterate or don't speak the language that you're trying to onboard them onto. The opportunity to make an impact across the world is something that is very unique. I grew up in India personally, and I can tell my story, right? I saw firsthand that if you were poor, it was very hard for you to progress up. You or anyone here has that opportunity to build products, make a massive impact to these people. Many times, these are like on vehicle solutions, for example, these people don't have access to cars. They don't have access to jobs. And we have an opportunity to provide that. And so that's what I want you to take away at the very least is on the driver team,
one of the big things we're focusing on is building products for our end users. And these users are people, whether it's people like us who take Ubers all the time because we want to be safe. It's for drivers who are using and depending on us for a means of living. And it is for everybody in a city. We're making an impact. We're creating millions and millions of jobs. In many countries, we're the platform that is the largest employer. We provide that platform by which people can get those jobs. And it's an amazing opportunity. And by the way, Seattle plays an integral part to this. And I hope that came through.